Okay, we're going to be eager tonight and get started 2 minutes early. We'll call to order the February 11th Fort Mill Town Council meeting. Welcome to everyone to join us tonight for your opportunity for information. If you have a cell phone, please silence the cell phone so that we can give you our full attention. We're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for the opportunity to be here tonight. We hope that You will be with all of the council members, that we may make the right decisions for our town. Thank You for all the blessings You have bestowed upon us, and help us that we may get home safe. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Council members, you have been provided the minutes from our January 28th council meeting. Do we have any changes, additions, deletions?
Hearing none, I move to approve them as read.
Ronnie
Second.
hears none, so he's approving, and we've got a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you. Public comment. I left my glasses at home tonight, and my friend over here, Jamie, has loaned me his. So if it comes out in worse gobbledygook than normal, forgive me, okay? Pursuant to Section 2-46 of the Code of Ordinances for the Town of Fort Mill, any resident may appear before council for the purpose of providing public comments on any municipal matter except personnel matters. Those who wish to speak must sign the public comment sheet prior to the start of the meeting. Do we have anyone signed to speak?
No, ma'am.
We do not? All righty then. Then we'll move forward with presentation item number 1, Fort Mill Wayfinding Master Plan, Fort Mill Economic Development Council.
Mayor, members of council, I'm going to, Chris is going to plug in back here for me so we can go over a little bit of our PowerPoint. You have in front of you a copy of the Wayfinder Study Report. This is the final report. Those are yours to keep and to consider. And what we'd like to do tonight is just give you a little bit of an overview of what you're going to be seeing in this proposal, and talk a little bit about next steps. My name is Leanne Burnett Morse. I don't know if all of you know who I am, but I'm actually standing up here, and I am Chris is my co-presenter, and these gentlemen behind me, David Bust, Wink Ray, John Ellington, and Shaw Kuster, the Executive Committee of the Economic Council, are also part of this, and some other members of our council as well. And this project, getting this to the study and getting to this point, has been a joint effort between the Economic Council and the town of Fort Mill staff. So everything that we're presenting to you tonight is a result of that joint effort. It's not just council, or economic council rather. So I'm gonna go through this with you briefly, and then make all of these gentlemen available for any questions that you may have. But I just want to begin by saying that, why did we embark on this at all? And as you know, or maybe you've heard in some of your meetings, that there's a tremendous growth in Fort Mill, and that growth brings with it a lot of new people. It also brings new challenges, and one of those is getting people where they need to go. And Wayfinder signage systems have been shown in different areas to decrease the amount of people who are driving around sort of looking for a location, looking for a destination or a parking area, and it's shortening those times and increasing sort of the point-to-point, what makes sense in a mapping manner, but also it's helping to create an identity within the community. You've just spent considerable time and money, I'm sure, on a new logo and new branding, and the signage that is part of this would incorporate that branding as well and help to identify what is Fort Mill, what is not Fort Mill. I know you've heard, as I have, oh yes, you want to go downtown Fort Mill? It's Market Street in Baxter. Well, it's not Market Street in Baxter. And so the signage system and the Wayfinder system will help to bring forth that brand and that delineation of what is town and what is not town. So we'll start by going through here. As a result of this study, the number 3 keeps coming up. We have 3 types of routes, 3 tiers of destinations, and 3 types of primary signage. So we're going to go through those just briefly and give you an overview of kind of how we arrived at what we have arrived with. There are 3 types of routes. By the way, I'm going to look at my time, make sure I go up. Major routes, these say circulator routes. At some points in the study, you'll also see the word connector. Circulator and connector are interchangeable. And then destination routes. The major routes obviously are the higher traffic counts, those I-77, 160, US 21 bypass. The connector routes are meant to, the way they've worded it, to connect major routes or destinations to each other. And then the destination routes are the final turn, or what would get you actually to where you're going. Now, to determine destinations, there has been a set of criteria assigned to figure out what are the destinations that should be listed and how do we rank them. And if you look in your book on page 7, you will see the scoring criteria. And just because something's scored in these categories doesn't mean it necessarily has to be on here. What gets on here ultimately is up to us, pretty much, to the people who are going to be putting this forward. But the way it's designed right now, you have 3 tiers of destinations that have been assigned in this study, and you'll be able to see those. They begin on page, let's see, they begin on page 8, where they talk about the top tier destinations, page 12. These are, again, the primary locations that we're talking about. Downtown Fort Mill as a district, the new visitor center for the Ann Springs Close Greenway, the Fort Mill Recreation Complex, which we know actually has a name now, Walter Elisha Park, Carowinds. Those are what we call tier 1 destinations. On the next page, you'll see the tier 2 destinations, which include the various entrances to the Greenway, the golf courses, the athletic parks, and also the high schools. And the high schools were included because they have athletic facilities that bring in people from out of town who are looking for those games and things. And then the tier 3 destinations are some of their smaller parks. You'll see that we had Elisha Park on tier 1, some of the larger parks on tier 2, and tier 3 has the smaller community parks. Also has some of our cultural listings like the Fort Mill History Museum and the Fort Mill Community Playhouse, and some smaller designations, for example, the post office. Those are little icon signs that will be added. But the destination in tiers can be phased in any way that the committee decides it can. So if you decide to, for budget purposes, start with a phase 1, a phase 2, and a phase 3, that doesn't correlate to the tiers. Your phase 1 can be a combination of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, whatever it is decided is the most critical, and those things and how they connect to each other. So there's a lot that can be done in terms of phasing to customize the system and how it gets laid out and when. The third part of this is there are 3 primary types of signage, and if you start at page 15, you'll see that this is a recommendation based on your newly created branding. So we have the logos, the fonts, we also have on page 17 the colors, and then it gets into some additional graphic information. All of the signs have been designed to conform to SCDOT and MUTCD standards, so both state and federal standards, with regard to how many things are listed on a sign, what size the fonts are, how the arrows are, how many turns there can be on any given sign. And you'll see an example on page 20 of the pole-mounted signs. Those are probably most of what you will see in the system. These are called vehicular trailblazers. And if it's in a high-speed area, there are 2 poles, obviously larger sign. That for the low-speed area, they're the single poles. And then the pedestrian trailblazers, which is almost all the way to the right there, those would be your downtown signs where you would be walking to particular locations and it would be pointing you in one direction or the other. And the other type of sign is page 21, and these are your gateway or monument signs. And these are the big signs that welcome you when you cross into the town limits from various points, whether it be 21 or on 160. And there are spots that have been identified for all of these signs. Every sign has had a recommendation made for where it will be placed, all the information that will be on each one. There are restrictions about how many destinations can be on a particular sign. It is limited to 3. So all of that has been taken into consideration and mapped out on a lot of these pages that follow. Beginning on page 28, you get into the sign schedule. And you'll start to see, as you flip through the pages there, a lot of aerial images that show you in a graphic form there where particular signs would be located, so you can get a real feel for where they are in a practical setting. And again, that goes on and on throughout the vehicular trailblazers, and also the monument gateway signs are in there as well. Some of the icon signs rather, for parking and the library, and you've seen some of those where you see a person reading a book, or you see for the library or the postal sign, and we in a hospital, we hope for a hospital sign at some point. All of those, we did offer to put it on there, and if we put it on that, it will come. But we hope to be adding those, and those go on as an icon that is attached to the sign. And even though we are growing very quickly and things are changing, the least expensive part of the sign is the panel with the words on it. So most of the cost is in the pole and setting and all of that. So if we do have changes that come about, we can make changes to the signs without a lot of additional cost. That is the least expensive of that process. The next phase of this is the implementation phase, and we're here tonight to present this to you for you to hopefully accept as information on the path to adoption. I know you have to go through this and meet and talk about it. The next phase of this is of course when we start talking about phasing for how many different phases that you would like to divide this into based on the cost. Very few towns do a complete put it all up at one time. It's just not feasible to do that. But the other part of that is, in a continued partnership role, the Economic Council would like to work alongside the town staff, and Chris and we have met about figuring out the ins and outs of that to help identify grant funding. That's one of the things that we would like to offer our services for. And in some of those grants, obviously there's a match to be dealt with, and sometimes it's an upfront match. So we would have to work in conjunction with you to determine what the amount of funds would be, what the timing would be, and to see if we can help find some state, federal, whatever that money may be out there to help pay for the system. If you flip through, there are, on page 54, this is the one everybody wants to know, what page is this? This is the estimate of the system in terms of cost, and it's both a low and a high, and you can see there's a lot of range in there. And a lot of what will determine that cost will be once a sign fabricator is identified and we are able to get actual prices on things. These are based on 2 real systems that were put in. In one place it was a lot less expensive, one place it was a lot more. Our consultant said that, and I think Chris can speak to this a little bit too, just on some initial calls that we may be probably closer to the lower estimate than the higher, but obviously those numbers are something that would come as part of the next phase that we're heading into. Again, with phasing, there's a whole section in here that talks a little bit about how that would work, and it really be up to the committee, whoever ends up taking this forward, to determine what is most critical. Do we have this much to spend? Well, we can probably then accomplish this many signs. This has already been sent to the South Carolina DOT for their initial review. They like to review everything first to see if you're kind of on the right track. and send the flag up the pole if they see anything wrong. They've already responded that everything looks good and that they're ready to work with us. Obviously, each sign has to be permitted, and that's when the final approval will come for the various signs. But that is the step that once we are ready to make a move forward that we'll be taking. Page 58 is a recommended implementation strategy board that takes us through the first few years. Again, it's a recommendation from the consultant based on some other, and I apologize, I have looked at what I'm telling you and I have not been keeping up on the screen, so my apologies to people in who are sitting in with us. But this is the strategy board. Again, it's been reviewed with town staff and with us, and it looks like something that we can work with alongside you in determining kind of where we go next and what responsibilities fall on each side and how we can help. There's something in the back here. There's a green sheet of paper, and then about 8 pages after that. What you see after that is not part of this initial project. It's not part of the scope. The interstate gateways that we included, because we had a consultant who already had access to all of the traffic data, had done all of the legwork on the signage itself, we asked him to recommend where interstate gateways might go, but that's an entirely separate project. We're not asking you for that. We're not considering that. That would be something down the road, but we wanted to take advantage of the fact that he had the information to be able to go ahead and give us a recommendation for future to help us with planning if there is a need to do that and go forward. So we're bringing this to you and asking you to accept it and move toward adoption when you are ready, and we'll make ourselves available at any time for further meetings. If you need us to answer questions, we can also consultant is happy to be consulted if you have questions for him. So whatever you may need, we're ready to go forward with that. And at that point, I'll open it up to any questions you may have for any of us here.
I think it's important for those that will be watching this on the loop afterwards that there's a couple of things we need to clarify. This is preliminary work that unfortunately we began many years ago and never brought it to fruition. So I thank you for the energy and effort and determination that has gone into it from a partnership. Also the financial contribution from the Economic Development Council towards getting this off of first base, if you will. We do have a very I hate calling it sophisticated budget process, but we do have to find the funding to do this. And I think one of the critical areas of implementing this will be that it will assist with cutting down on unnecessary trips. We hear about traffic incessantly, and this is something that would help people find their way to their destination without having to make the loop, without having to keep going round and round. So many other communities have found that to be beneficial, and I think for that alone, we certainly have to find a way to begin implementation. Arnett and Muldrow has been great. They have been a wonderful contractor to help with much of the information that's in this booklet. We really need, as a community, to support the revitalization downtown with the businesses and the pedestrian traffic that we have. This is also something that would certainly support that. I think from the figures, though, we certainly as council members have tried to keep up. It's one of many, but from the cost figures, I don't see us doing it all at one time personally.
Sure.
I see us doing a phased project, and the information is just critical to getting us to the very first step to do that. So thank you. It's wonderful to see complete information and guidance and partnershiping, and we are grateful for that. The council will take into advisement. You guys can say everything you want to say. I'm just trying to give some character and put it in a box so that everybody will understand. We will have a planning session quarterly, so we'll take it into that planning session and begin to do work on how that will fit into the budget.
And for this presentation, I'll be giving it to Chris as well, so he'll have that. If you want to share it publicly or just for your information, he will have that available.
it's a beautiful package. Well done.
Very well presented. Just a quick question. You've got the schools listed as part of this, the high schools. Don't they already have DOT signs pointing to the different schools? When you're talking about only 3 locations, I'm thinking space is going to be valuable here. So
Yeah.
I just want to be sure we're not duplicating what
Sure.
someone else could do.
Sure. Part of the early process of this, by the way, I was the one who originally asked you for the funding, and I want to say how grateful I am that we did actually finish the project.
Absolutely.
It's when you put a lot of good people at an effort, it's amazing how well you can chip away at something. And that was kind of the process. So the school board was actually consulted with this. Chuck Epps was part of the process. So this wasn't in a vacuum. The Greenway was part of this. The school district was part of this. The town was part of this. Businesses were part of this. They wanted to be included in this. They thought it was important, at least at the high school level, to have the opportunity to be on the monument signs and to be is it a tier 2 location.
Yes.
So they won't be on every sign, and the ranking really is where all the stakeholders really put the work in to make sure that we got it right. It wasn't in a vacuum, to make sure that high schools are not off on their own and not included in the study.
But I did talk to Aaron Arnett, actually, about that. I had the question as well, why high schools, why not others if we're including schools? And the answer was because of the athletic facilities, because of people coming to, larger groups of people coming, and those facilities kind of stretch out, and they're large. And so that was the thought process, was that is something where you have out-of-towners coming in and looking for those locations. That's why those 3 were included.
That's fine. I appreciate it. And to reiterate what Mayor has said, great job, very professional, and thank you guys for the time and effort y'all put into this. This is one of the more professional presentations that we've seen from an outside source, so thank you.
Very good.
It's a definite need. I'm friends with Bart that owns the gym. We go to on Main Street, and he was out there, and we have a little parking issue here at this lot now because we have so many great places to eat. So it's a great
Yeah.
problem.
Good
Where I
problem
grew
to
up, all the Main Street's boarded up now, so it's a good problem to have. But he said, well, there's a church parking lot right here. He directed some people. He said, we don't know where to park. And he said, but if you go back here, there's a huge parking lot. They had no idea it was there. So
Right.
this will be a good thing, asset for our community. And we appreciate you guys, all the time and money and effort you put into it. Thank
Well,
you.
I feel like there are different ways to sort of skin this,
Yeah.
in terms of what kind of funding we may be able to bring to the table, and so it's not a small expenditure, certainly. So we want to be able to offer that help to try and identify those funds by reaching out to other communities who have also done this. We've already started doing that. We know in some communities where they have been able to find funding, so we can help with that, because it's not something that I think anybody thinks you should just outright have to pay for without some grant help.
And every public parking has been detailed in this study.
Yeah.
And trust me, that will make all the signs.
Everybody knows where to park. They all get parking.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Could we look into taking up some of the duplicate signs that the Department of Transportation has put around town? Maybe we can multi-purpose them.
That is talked about in here, about there are some intersections and places that are identified as being already cluttered. So there is some hope that because this is being approved by the DOT, that we will be able to clean that up a little bit and make it more uniform.
It has a lot of good merit for us to proceed, and again, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Did the consultant give us any kind of heads up as to where should we put the fine point downtown here, put in the tier 1 to get downtown, put in the secondary signs to get for the sites that can be seen downtown, and then radiate out from that, or put in all the tier 1 signs just to get the traffic moving where it needs to go, and then work backwards from there as to the sites and that we want people to stop at?
When we asked that same question about how would that work, the answer came back kind of however you want it to work. In other words, it might be more beneficial to the town to have those trailblazers out that are guiding people in a larger sense to the different districts, rather than the pedestrian signage when you're already downtown. Maybe getting the signs that get you to downtown and get you parked could be something that is of more importance. The gateway signs, which are beautiful, are the most expensive and maybe the last part of this, because they're not really getting people from one place to the other. They're a little bit more image. So whatever funding there is to work with, we can go then and say we have $50,000 for this phase, and then through those different, because every sign is permitted individually, we can kind of pick and choose what makes the most sense to get it started and say, hey, this year we think this is the set that we want to go with. And we would depend very heavily on your planning folks and transportation to identify where that need is greatest. But it's completely customizable as to what signs get put in when.
I'll say we put a couple signs in, and I know we named the complex already, but if it did not have a name, are we able to install the signs, have that blank spot, and the vendor will come back,
Yes.
Yes.
put the name in? No,
Yes.
that's
The,
already covered in the cost.
There were a couple of different options for signs to begin with, and one of them was a sign that was slotted, so each one was different. But it looked a little bit like an oar, I think. It was a little strange, but also it's a
boat paddle.
a boat paddle. But and that would let you do it individually. But those signs have a higher maintenance cost because there are more moving pieces to them, more pieces to maintain. So the piece that is that has the words on it is the less expensive piece. So as a matter of fact, he gave me just tossed out a cost of like $250. So if you did have, I know Banks Athletic Park has recently been named, so you have that going in. But if you didn't have something like that, the cost to then change it later, it would not be included in the original sign cost, but it would be a minimal cost. And there is also information here about the cost of maintenance over time, because that's a consideration in maintaining the system once it's up.
And I think it's very much like what we talk about with the roadways. Now's the time to plan, not after the fact. Now's the time for us to take into account that we're going to build an amphitheater. Where would we want to route that, or where
Right.
will a developer? And maybe we start asking for some funding as we move forward from those that are investing in our community for that sign that would help them with their traffic and their consumer. I think we have to look at all avenues, but I do see that it will be very beneficial.
There are some examples of some towns where they have private partnerships, and we, of course, have not looked into that yet because it wasn't time. But it's something that we would definitely want to look into on the town's behalf, because that's money we don't want to leave on the table if it's available.
Awesome.
Okay.
One quick comment related but not directly, more for Davey and his staff. With all these renamings, can we be sure that we're up to speed on Google Maps and Waze and all of that? We had a event at the complex and everybody's trying to find YMCA, ended up at Baxter, different places, but let's just do a double check to make sure all the current names, not what we called it 10 years ago, but the current names are set up correctly in those systems. I was told by a couple of people that do that for a living, it may take 3 or 4 times of reaching out to those people to actually make it happen.
We can do that.
Okay. This will be a great phase 2 on that, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. We appreciate it. Old business items. Old business item number 1, second reading and public hearing. An ordinance abandoning and transferring an existing water and sewer easement to the property owners of property located at intersections of Steele Street and Tom Hall Street affecting York County tax parcel numbers 020-0425-012, 020-0425-020, 020-05 25010-020-0425-011. This is torment for a person without her glasses. And 020-0425-008. This is Ward 2. Mr. Helms. Davy Broom is our resident expert. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept old business item number 1.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Davy?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor. This again is the second reading of the abandoning of an existing right-of-way on a piece of property. This right-of-way was for a previous elevated storage tank that was located at the end of Nesbitt Street, which the site is now our Unity Cemetery mausoleum site. So this tank had been removed years ago. This was the main water line coming from that tank, and the line is being abandoned, and the new property owner is asking that we remove the easement also from that property.
Questions? Comments? Before we vote, do we open the public hearing? We'll open the public hearing at this time. If anyone has need to make comment, now's your chance. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed. Any further questions or comments from council?
Just to make sure we're not giving away
Correct.
property. We are
Correct.
just taking our right of easement
That is correct.
that we have on the property away.
Good point to make. Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you so much. New business items. New business item number 1, first reading and public hearing. An ordinance annexing York County Tax Map number 738000042 containing 1+10 plus or minus acres located at 1850 North Doby's Bridge Road, Ward 4, Mr. Moody, Chris Pettit. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept new business item number 1.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Chris?
Mayor, this property is located across Debbie's Bridge Road from Debbie's Bridge Park. The applicant here is requesting annexation with a zoning designation of HC Highway Commercial. Town staff reviewed the request, found the designation to be consistent with nearby properties and the request to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Any future development of the site would be subject to a traffic study. The cost of any improvements relating to that or any utility locations would be borne by the applicant. Staff did recommend in favor of approval of the annexation, and the Planning Commission also reviewed the request and recommended in favor of approval.
What do they plan to do with the property?
Mayor, I don't have the answer to that question.
So no one has provided any indication on background or reason for the annexation and
The application did not specifically list a purpose for the request.
okay?
Do we have, I'm
No,
sorry.
I just,
Have we had a request like this in the past where it's just a,
We have. I mean, sometimes they come in with a full plan of what they intend to do. Other times it's working towards an assemblage of properties, or other times it's any number of reasons why. They may come with varying levels of detail.
I find it very difficult to vote on something when we don't know what we're ultimately going to see as a disposition for that property. That's my personal opinion. But I find that very hard, because everyone else we're asking to provide a TIA in advance as they bring forth what they would like to do with the property so that we can make an educated decision on whether it can handle the traffic or the type of infrastructure needs that it might require. And with this, we have nothing.
And Mayor, the reasoning for that, this request actually came in prior to the approval of the recent
Right.
transportation impact ordinance. Therefore, it's been moving forward, absent a TIA like you would see from now on moving forward. with
And the
this
surrounding properties around it, how are they zoned?
The properties, unfortunately, this map is not updated, but 1836 here is zoned in town highway commercial. 1822, this little corner piece was highway commercial, recently annexed with the Goddard School.
that's the park,
Property.
proposed park?
That was property discussed of getting to the town, correct. These properties here that don't have a color associated with them, those are highway commercial in town. This down here is the corner of Doby's Bridge and the Parkway, it's highway commercial. The other surrounding properties are mostly in the county RD2, which is a rural residential zoning designation.
Further questions? Comments?
It
We
just,
don't do anything. They have to go by our zoning, right?
They have to go by the highway, highway commercial.
so they could they put a QT right there?
It's not big enough.
Is that highway commercial?
It would be a use that would be allowed in the zone. Now, whether or not they could, excuse me, can meet all of the parking, buffer, those types of requirements and actually fit that on the site, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I think I'd feel more comfortable if I knew what was going on.
Me too.
I think I would too.
Me too. Let's open the public hearing and see if we have any comment. We'll open the public hearing at this time for this particular business item. Anyone have comment that they would like to offer? Crickets. Hear none. Hearing none, I believe that the motion on the table was to accept. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Barry? How do we make a difference? Are we-
You
never
vote-
mind,
you vote
never
on
mind,
it.
I got
Vote
it,
it
I
up or
got it. It
down.
just went through my head the wrong way.
Vote up or down?
All right, all those in favor of approving this motion and this item, please say aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
All right. I believe that's a 6-1 for Jamie. Thank you. It doesn't mean we wouldn't consider it if we had more information, I believe. New business item number 2, first reading and public hearing. Looks like the one I just did. No. An ordinance annexing York County tax map number 707-00000061, containing approximately 51.44 plus or minus acres located at 2198 and 2205 Whites Road, Ward 4, Mr. Moody, Chris Pettit. Do I have a
I
motion?
make a motion to accept new business item number 2.
Have a motion to accept. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, you have a motion and an acceptance. Chris?
Mayor, this is the applicant, the Fort Mill School District, is requesting annexation with a zoning designation of R15 residential, which is generally consistent with what other schools are zoned in town. Ultimately, this request is intended for the development of a future middle school site on the property. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The applicant is already in the process of performing a traffic study for the proposed middle schools on the site. Any improvements deemed necessary from that would be the responsibility of the applicant. Staff did recommend in favor of approval, and the Planning Commission also reviewed the request and recommended in favor of approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
They are doing a traffic study.
Correct. This request, like the other one, came in prior to our recent ordinance that would have required a traffic study on the front end, but they are undergoing a traffic study at this time for the proposed middle school.
How are we doing with that? We had discussed changing their designation from RD15 to a specific school designation.
With the UDO, the intent was to move forward to something that was consistent with all that was slightly different maybe than R15. At this time, the reasoning for R15 was that it was consistent with a lot of the other schools, and so that was our maybe best zoning designation with our current ordinance.
I agree with matching what previous schools are, but I still think we need to move forward for some type of a government zoning, given that
Agreed.
we're against more dense housing, and we're now giving the school district giving property that has that dense R15. So I hope we continue moving with that project that we had requested before. And if I'm counting right, does this make the 6th school that we will have in a 2-mile area stretch on the bypass, basically? If you look at Riverview, Banks Trail, middle school, elementary school proposed, Catawba Ridge,
Fort Mill,
and
Fort
then
Mill.
Dobie's Bridge Elementary. Yeah, and heaven forbid you go another mile and you've got Fort Mill Middle and Elementary. Okay.
The school district is not without gargantuan efforts to plan each of their facilities. However, some discussion we've had among ourselves prior to this item would be the traffic pattern. Whites Road is certainly not in any condition to handle one more car, much less an exit for a school. How do we manage that?
Mayor, that would be something that would be studied by the transportation engineers, and any improvements that were deemed necessary to mitigate the impact on Whites Road, the intersection of Fort Mill Parkway and the surrounding intersections. I think there were 6+ intersections that they would specifically have to study. Turn lanes, additional traffic signals, etc. Any of those improvements to maintain level of service would be the responsibility of the applicant, being the school district.
Do they have a time schedule when they're thinking about moving some dirt around in there?
I believe this school was slated to open in 2020,
I think that's
I
right.
believe.
So with all the traffic and the hot mess that we had down there with Lennar building their big project, and they finally got that road halfway decent, now we're gonna turn around and have these guys go in and tear the road to pieces again. Excuse my French, I almost said something I shouldn't have.
And certainly, they're not allowed to put schools without heavy oversight by state folks as well. It's not just us. I get that, but I do think I would like to hear some options that they are mulling over for handling that side of this issue.
Thus far, they've scoped the traffic study, and basically that is the town working with SCDOT and York County and the Office of School Facilities to establish all of the parameters for the study, the assumptions, the variables, and the traffic engineers will take that back, build a model to basically show what the impact would be, and then to determine the various improvements that would be required to mitigate those. But thus far, the key takeaway is the scoping is completed through the town, SCDOT, and York County.
And again, they don't operate in a vacuum. I
No,
mean,
they don't.
they have a lot of oversight, so I get that. But to Lisa's point, Councilman Cook, you know, I've promoted before that we named the bypass Education Highway, you know, because it's there. It's totally there. So I do think, you know, any future changes, we have to take into account the fluctuation of traffic on that bypass.
I will probably get a call from every school board member when I leave, but anybody who's selling property on the other side of 77, please let the school district know so they can build some schools over there. Michelle Brandon, give me a call. I'm right here. You got my number. Other question is relating to two-part, and I know they've not done any redistricting yet. That will come later on, but is there thought process that the majority of these students that would be using that would be Whites Road students, or would it be coming from other areas?
We would have no,
So,
no one.
yeah, I
None.
just didn't know if they kind of looking at population numbers, because they do plan out population 10
Yes.
years in advance. So.
We do work hand in hand with, they have a consultant that basically is their demographic and population specialist, and we work with them multiple times a year to make sure their projections are up to date. But as far as the districting and where these students would come from, I couldn't speak to that.
Okay, and second part of traffic for me is, where do we stand on York County and the intersection at the Riverview Elementary and the bypass there and the light? We know York County purchased that land a while ago. Where are we looking? Is that going to be complete by the time this school would be?
I've asked, I've spoken with Michael Johnson, the new chair of the county council, and have asked plaintively that if at all possible, that needs to happen before Catawba Ridge High School opens, or it will be chaos on that bypass.
We have 7 months.
And I know they had, they had one hurdle they had to clear, but you're right, the funding has been there, the right-of-way has been acquired, the engineering has been done. I want to see some dirt move. I literally don't want to be the person in town the day that high school opens and that interchange is not fixed so that the traffic can move along that road.
So just reiterating, that is York County
It is not us.
that is heading that project up.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Further comments? We're not beating up on the schools. They have a really hard time finding property that they can afford without passing the higher cost along, and that will be accepted by the state for a school with egress. I mean, it's a complicated process. All right, we will open our public hearing at this time. Guess we've all said enough. We'll close the public hearing. The motion on the table is to approve new business item number 2. All those in favor, please say it.
Before we take a vote, is
What?
there any way that we can have that traffic study before we get our second vote?
Probably not.
Based on its current path, I would say it would not be completed prior to your next meeting. But staff could certainly reach out and see if there are any preliminary sort of
Yeah, even if we can get
findings.
a rough estimate, that would be better than
Then not having.
nothing.
We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Mayor, I think you had a question back here just.
I'm sorry. I talk a lot, so raise your hand big if you have something you need to present. Okay, any further comment or question? Public hearing has been closed. All those in favor of the motion on the table to approve this item, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you so much. New business item number 3. A resolution designating Walter Y. Elijah Park as the site of a public festival at which alcoholic beverages may be consumed, and to authorize a special event permit for live music and sound amplifying equipment on May 3rd, 2019, and May 4th, 2019. Our resident expert is Caroline Hasty. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we accept new business item number 3.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Welcome. You're going to tell us about strawberries, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am. They are in the fields. We have 12 weeks before the Strawberry Festival will kick off the 10th annual Strawberry Festival. I'm super excited. We've got some great things planned. The committee has been working very hard and wanted to go ahead and have the request brought before you for a resolution to designate the Strawberry Festival that weekend for Walter Elijah Park for the public festival, and alcohol will be consumed, as well as live music and sound amplification. So super excited. We got lots of things planned. The bands are still, contracts are starting to roll in, and so we're moving forward. So the event will be held on May 3rd and May 4th.
Excellent. Any questions for Caroline?
Miss Caroline, while you're standing there, have y'all received some awards in the past on the Strawberry Festival?
Yes, sir. We certainly have.
Would you care to elaborate on those?
Yes, sir. Actually, today was a very good day for the town of Fort Mill and the South Carolina Strawberry Festival. I'm super excited to talk about our Strawberry Festival. Debbie Wizards, her festival poster. I went to the North Carolina Festivals and Events. It's a very strong conference. For any of the events that are near the state line usually go to that event and that conference, as well as North Carolina. So our poster was up against some major competition. So I'm so excited. We did win first place for the medium category. Thank you. For the medium category for for Debbie's poster. I cannot wait. The professor at High Point University said it gave him depth and gave him a reason to come to Fort Mill. Never heard of Fort Mill. So I'm super excited. He was from Arizona, went to now he's at High Point. So super excited. We're all over the state of North Carolina for the Strawberry Festival Best Poster and our artist. Also, Mr. Huntley, I wanted to just put this in to see what happens. As you all know, the Scarecrow Crawl, every year the Scarecrow Crawl has just grown. In 2015, we had 10 scarecrows. 2016, we had 37. 2017, we had 48. And last year, we had 73. So it's a Rising Star Award. Came from the North Carolina Festivals as a promising event to grow even farther. So this was super exciting. A lot of hard work went into this with a budget of $200. You can't beat that. So
Let's give Caroline a round of applause.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the support on that. With the Strawberry Festival coming up, it just seems like a great time to be celebrating and the achievements of the festivals for the year, for the town, as well as the Strawberry Festival. All of those are put in. So,
Any questions?
Just a request, since Darius has the band back together, you think we can get him to South Carolina this year?
I'm still
year.
working on a cameo. Next year. Where's Wink? I'm always asking him to see what, I
I
know
was
he
gonna
knows
say,
people.
he has specifically sat to where he can't make eye contact with me, so yes.
Going it that way. Yes, that is something that, you know, there's always humor in a joke, right? Hint, hint, wink,
Hint,
wink.
hint, exactly. Awesome.
All righty. Anything else you need from us other than a vote?
For that one, no ma'am.
Okay, all those in favor of this, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you so very much. New business item number 4, a resolution,
Sorry, go ahead, sorry.
a resolution designating Main Street, Tom Hall Street to Academy Street as the site of a public festival on Wednesday, May the 1st, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., in which alcoholic beverages may be consumed, and to authorize a special event permit for live music and sound amplifying equipment. Once again, it's Caroline. Do I have a
I
motion?
make a motion to accept new business item number
Do I have a
4.
second?
Second.
Thank you. Caroline?
This is something new. As you know, as a festival grows, it takes on a different life in itself. And some things are just do not grow with the festival. And one of the events that just was not growing with the festival was the Pick and Flick event. We ran it several years. I will tell you, weather did not help the situation. We found that folks were coming out, picking their strawberries and going home. And it was great. It was great. But we also found that we were also depleting our product through the Pick and Flick. So we were having festivals. People were complaining on the final hours of the festival, going, they don't have any strawberries. So after much consideration and conversation with the event committee, it was proposed to talk to the downtown merchants about doing a strawberry downtown jam event type event. And just going for some research, discussing with the merchants, how do you feel about this? Would you support this event? And we had a great meeting. Of the downtown merchants, 14 downtown merchants attended. These are the businesses, not just individual merchants, but the businesses that came to the meeting. They were all excited about an opportunity. You see, the Pick and Flick was really geared toward the community and what we could bring to the community, because we are pulling a lot of resources and a lot of time from the community. So we went a step further, and the merchants. So we went a step further and wanted to see if this is something that the merchants were seeing as well. And they do want to have the opportunity, at least try it for this year, to see if having a downtown jam would be what could bring the community together in celebration of the Strawberry Festival. So we are looking with those merchants. We are looking at Wednesday, May 1st. And the event, the street closure would begin at 4 p.m. and end at 10 p.m. And the event itself would be held from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Hobos, Jason Cloud, has requested that he hold the liquor liability for this event. We are looking at the street taking on the same as the past jams have been, on Main Street, from Tom Hall to Academy. And there will be some downtown vendors. That would be how we could recoup a little bit of money. They all love the bandstand. So we're putting a band inside the bandstand. I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought they would want the big stage, but they really like the historic value of the bandstand. So
Do they know we only have one plug-in?
we're supposed to have enough power for a band.
Look at you.
So that would be news to me. So I did check on that. So I was pretty excited. The Spratt building has, I've reserved that building for possibly a downtown crawl art show, a downtown, photography contest. What is Fort Mill to you? And again, this is geared toward the community, toward the downtown merchants. And we wouldn't be having food trucks per se, but we would have dessert items since we have such great restaurants.
Any questions for Caroline?
Just a comment, closing Main Street at 4 o'clock is not ideal for our traffic patterns that we have. Do we really need that full amount of time if we're not gonna have a band down at the end? So, just as we're planning, let's,
It's
try to be
Saturday,
mindful.
right?
No,
It's
the-
Wednesday.
Wednesday? Oh, ooh.
Sure, it is. It would be a challenge, but to have those vendors set up and tents placed on the street, that would be a safe time to, once the streets are closed, doesn't mean that we get people off the street. Does that make sense? There's
Yeah.
still
Okay.
that timeline to get folks off the street, getting through there. If they're turning left off of Confederate Street, if they're finding they're coming the wrong way out of from the parking lot behind Hobos and Local Dish. Those kinds of things we have to take into account too. And also filling the barricades with water and we do extra barriers. We just don't put up, signs. We might have a fire truck, we might have a utility truck, that kind of thing as an additional barricades.
Some of the events we've had recently on Main Street, there's such good participation that it does get crowded on Main Street. So the only thing I would suggest is, I think you did a great job at the event we had on the other side of Veterans Park over in the grass. It was some kind of a music, I'm sorry, maybe it was Movies in the Park, I don't remember which one. But if we could move some of the food vendors, some of these other vendors you're talking about having in that area, or an area to kind of free up the flow on Main Street, it would be helpful. I know the Trick or Treat event was extremely crowded on there, and it was hard to move around and really even engage with those vendors. So just kind of give that, as I know this is a first year, so as we start planning and looking, let's look at some other options a little bit off of Main Street, but still adjacent, if at all
Okay.
possible. That's all I got.
Further questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of this item, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you.
Great.
Alrighty.
Thank you,
Thank you, Caroline. New business item number 5, first reading. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances for the Town of Fort Mill, Chapter 2, Administration. Article 2, Mayor and Council, Division 1, generally Section 2-26, Salaries, so as to provide for the reimbursement of expenses incurred in the performance of official duties and to provide for compensation in association with participation in the town health insurance and the state retirement system. Davy Broom. Do I have a
Make a motion to
motion?
accept new business item number 5.
I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Davy?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this item is really to kind of clean up some wording in our already ordinance that we have pertaining to the salaries and council members. We found that the ordinance needed some additional wording to bring it up to our, bring it more in line with the state laws. So that's why we're proposing this now.
Any questions?
And then in turn, because it's an ordinance, we are not affected by this until the following election cycle.
That's
We do not
correct.
benefit from anything that we vote in an ordinance of this matter immediately.
That's correct. It would not take place immediately. If approved, it would take place January of 2020.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you very much. New business item number 6, first reading. A series ordinance approving, with no glasses, it's like a serious ordinance.
Turned something up.
That's serious, sir.
Yeah, a serious ordinance. Sorry, Siri. A series ordinance approving the financing of the construction and equipping of certain improvements to sewer facilities of the town of Fort Mill through the borrowing, the borrowing of not exceeding $35 million plus capitalized interest, if any, from the State Water Pollution Control Revolving Fund by agreement with the South Carolina Water Quality Revolving Fund Authority pursuant to Title 48, Chapter 5, Code of Laws in South Carolina, 1976, as amended, providing for the agreement to make and to accept a loan, the execution, I'm going to close one eye, and delivery of a loan agreement between the town of Fort Mill and the South Carolina Water Quality Revolving Fund Authority, the execution and delivery of a promissory note from the town of Fort Mill to the South Carolina Water Quality Revolving Fund Authority, and other matters relating thereto. Our expert is Shantae Bowler. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept new business item number 6.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Shantae, welcome.
Good evening.
I'm
I'm sorry that you had to read all that, Mayor, but,
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we vote yes so I don't have to read that again?
well, tonight, this ordinance, along with the next item on the agenda, are companion to each other. But this particular ordinance is authorizing the acceptance of the loan that was approved by the State Revolving Fund. As you know, there are two projects that we were trying to put a funding plan together for, one being the expansion of the waste treatment plant, which is the $35 million project, but with costs and fees associated, it goes beyond that. And then the second one was the water meter project that we were looking to do to enhance our operations with some of the electronic meter processing. And so we have, this piece of it is the loan from the State Revolving Fund, and it is referenced as Series 2019A. A portion of this loan is going to be paid back in a 20-year period with an interest rate of 2.6%. The remaining of that particular loan will be paid on a 30-year period at a rate of 2.80%. So this is first reading tonight for this particular piece of that funding plan. And I do have with us tonight Theo DeBose, who is our bond attorney. And Theo, would you like to add anything?
I think you've covered it quite well, Ms. Buller. A two-part financing for a two-part project, with your mostly going to the wastewater treatment plant. That's a pretty good commitment from the State Revolving Fund, I will say that, for a loan of that size. We don't see those every day in my practice, so I think it says well of management of the system by the town that they're willing to do that.
So tonight, this serves as first reading. There is no action on council's part tonight. Any questions?
Any questions?
When will the money transfer over?
We've got the two series, with the second ordinance is the series 2019B, and they actually need to close at the same time. So the calendar we have now, have you gotten your audit yet, or do you know about that?
It's in progress.
It's in progress. We do have to have your audit finished before we can go in the market. Just investors need to see that. But other than that, we're on track to price these bonds. Now, we've already priced the bonds on the $35 million. We already know how much you're paying back each year, and we know what the interest rates are. On the second piece, the 2019B, those will be priced by competitive sealed bid. We've developed a disclosure document that members of the town administration have put a lot of time into. We'll release that to rating agencies in a couple of weeks. We'll get a rating, and you already have an outstanding rating of A1. And then, assuming that doesn't change, we'll go into the market mid-March and close by the end of March. So we'll finish the reading process before the end of this month, and then administration can let you know when we'll be in the market, because on that second piece, the 2019B, the bidding is open to investment banks all over the country through this internet site. But at the end of the day, those investment banks turn around and sell their bonds to the public. So if anybody feels like investing in the town of Fort Mill, this is a real opportunity to do so. So we'll let you know when we're going to be there.
Any further questions?
Do we have a penalty if we're going to pay, if we want to pay this off early, or a portion of it off early?
The standard is in the market to avoid that kind of penalty is you can pay them off after 10 years or so. On the day of, your financial advisor, First Tryon, will kind of poke investors and say, what do you think? Can we lessen it to 9 years, but even after all that's happened in the country in the past 11 years, 10 years remains the standard for that. After that, you pay them off with no penalty.
I have to say that our financial stability is something that we probably don't give enough praise for. We are very, very grateful for the way our staff has handled the fiduciary responsibility of taxpayer money. And we continue to get excellent comments back from our auditors and from all those that we work with. So Shantae, Davey, all of you, thank you. That's really important to us.
You're welcome.
Any further comment? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Theo, for making the drive.
Glad to be here. Look forward to finishing. I know it's been a long time in town, so look forward to bringing it to conclusion next month.
We don't do anything short. New business item number 7, first reading. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale waterworks and sewer system improvement revenue bonds of the town of Fort Mill, South Carolina, to be designated Series 2019B and other matters relating thereto. Shantae Bowler, do I have a
I
motion?
make a motion to accept new business item number 7.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second.
As I said earlier, this is the companion to the 2019A. The total project was somewhere in the neighborhood of $49 million. So this particular ordinance will be taking care of the remainder for the meter project and for the waste treatment plant expansion.
Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Shantae.
Thank you.
There are no information or discussion items this evening. There is no executive session item for this evening, so we will start with Trudy tonight.
Okay. Week before last, Jamie and I attended a meeting in Columbia, Legislative Day. And we also, the second day, we attended the Municipal Association South Carolina Clinic, and it was very informative. We've got information, or I have information that I can share during our planning.
Excellent. That'll be wonderful.
And I would also like to say that this past week, we live in old Whiteville Park. We live right across the street from the old cemetery, and I would like to give some praise for the young men from the town that came out and did all the work that they did. The mulching and everything around the trees, it just looks really nice over there. And you can tell they put a lot of work into it.
Thank you, Ms. Eamsoff. That's our Public Works Department.
Public Works, yes.
They put a lot of effort into those.
It looks really nice over there.
Chris?
Patriots won the Super Bowl.
No.
I didn't want that to happen. But,
And the halftime show was terrible.
it was good. Stephon Gilmore got an interception, though. I was pretty excited about
Yeah,
that.
it was.
So, representing the Gamecocks. So, yeah. And, no, it's good to be back. I missed our last meeting, and I turned 40 on Sunday, so I remember my dad turned 40. I thought, man, that's old, but I don't really feel like that.
You can borrow Glenn's glasses.
Yeah.
Here.
So,
It was actually
thankful to get to 40.
All righty. Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Ronnie,
I'm good.
you good? Mr. Huntley?
Yes, I have a couple items.
Sure.
Number one, I noticed, and like to note the presence of Joel Hamilton.
yes.
Joel, you're one of the first people in history to be a member of the county council to attend our meetings.
Good to be here.
And he's also a member of our Fort Mill.
I was gonna say, more than once.
He's also a member of our Fort Mill Economic Council. Before the meeting started, I walked through the audience and introduced myself, and we've got at least 3 people who came just because they're new in town and want to know what's going on. I thought, well, boy, they got it all over. Most of the people have been here for 1,000 years. And last comment, excuse me, Caroline, I've been getting these little notices from you about the road's going to be closed, and I appreciate that. It's nice to know that. That's it.
Thank you, Jamie.
As Ms. Trudy said, we were down in Columbia for a couple days there at the Legislative Day and the MASC training days. It's always a good time to get down there and talk with your legislators. Always remember they work for us. You go down there and knock on the door, tell them what's going on, because the more people that talk, what's the old saying, squeaky wheel gets the oil. So the more people go down there and talk to them about our roads, talking about the growth issues that we're trying to deal with, talk about our educational system, the better it'll be for all of us. So, and good job with the road. The guys did a real good job getting that road fixed up here. I mean, they closed it down, fixed it, and had everything moving within the working day. So, good job on that.
Lisa?
First, I'd say great job with Parks and Rec team. We just finished up, or in the process of finishing up, our winter sports. So I will be leaving here in 15 minutes. I had the championship basketball game. But thank you, because I know we've got a lot of people that work and make that happen. And with Bank Street Gym having some improvements going on, it's kind of made it a little bit of a restructuring nightmare for you guys, so I appreciate it. Also, kind of to Mr. Huntley's point, new residents, if you're watching this, if you're in the audience, well, most of us have lived here, whether it's all of our lives, the majority of our lives. Is there something you don't know?
Not all of them ain't dead yet.
But if there's something you don't know, or if you have a question, ask us. So, you know, we're in the routine, we know. But feel free to reach out, shoot somebody a question, whether it's someone at town hall or even the council. We'll be happy to try to help you on that. So thank you for being here. And then also, you know, my little poke at school board earlier, just want you to know, we do work with our school board a lot. We engage with them not only at Chris and Davies level, but also the school district board, the school board and our council, and even TKK's council. They all work together hand in hand, trying to make the best decisions. And not all of them are perfect, but we try to make the best with what we've been dealt. So thank you to them who serve voluntarily. So.
Oh, absolutely. They do a fine job. I too would like to thank Public Works for the work that they've done in front of Town Hall. As bad as we hear, or as often as we hear bad comments about traffic, to put on a yellow vest and step out on the busiest part of a roadway and have to do repairs, that can't be easy nor fun, and they did an excellent job. I was just very pleased with the way they were handling that. For all those listening or watching, we don't make repairs to pipes unless they need it. And it's really kind of hard to see it coming sometimes since they're buried. So, we get a lot of questions on why didn't you catch that beforehand? Because it wasn't broken beforehand. So we do a really good job of trying to ferret through and do the work we need to do. So thank you for those that were driving along that way and showed patience and gave our guys the room they needed to be safe. Main Street. I've got to ask loudly, please slow down when you drive on Main Street. We are just short of having someone be seriously injured on Main Street. It's not a drag strip. It's not a raceway. I don't know what you're thinking when you're driving 90 miles an hour down Main Street. I'm on the treadmill or in one of those restaurants pretty much almost every day, if not twice a day. It's unbelievable how fast people go down Main Street. We are very fortunate to have the revitalization and the types of opportunities to go and sit on Main Street and enjoy a meal and enjoy each other. Please, slow down. Slow down. It's dangerous. I don't like it. I'm sure no one does, especially if you're trying to get out of your car on Main Street. Thank you to those that are parking in other areas, such as at the foot of Main. I saw a lot of parking taking place there, and we got to say thanks to the churches for allowing people to park in their lots as well. It's for everybody, guys. It's for everybody, so let's be patient and kind with everyone that wants to enjoy what Fort Mill has to offer. Litter, that's the other thing. Goodness gracious, our departments do the very best they can to keep Fort Mill looking good. We should too. We should not throw things out of our cars. If you're going to drive with something in the back of your truck, please weigh it down. Fort Mill belongs to all of us, not just the few that stop and pick it up and do the work. So please be mindful of our community and how it looks, if you would. Thanks to everyone for all that you do to support us in the work that we do. And with that, I'll entertain an adjournment. motion?
Second it.
All right. Woo! All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you.